Welcome to Built from Scratch. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs under 30 to hear about the stories of their initial success. My goal is to encourage the next generation of leaders to take action and make a difference. I'm Eric Libby. On today's episode, we have entrepreneur Hunter Beale with High School Hustle. Originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, Hunter's entrepreneurial journey began in 5th grade, selling snow cones, flipping Jordan sneakers, and turning Goodwill finds into eBay gold. While he started strong, his path wasn't without challenges. Living with a learning disability and battling self-doubt, Hunter transformed these obstacles into fuel for his future success. He went on to study entrepreneurship at Ball State University, and during that time launched Simpler Living LLC, which went on to get $250,000 in capital, a 300-person waiting list, and even had the opportunity to audition for Shark Tank. After graduation, Hunter managed 17 Jiffy Lube locations before transitioning to his current role as president of High School Hustle, working under the mentorship of leaders running $100 million businesses. Hunter is just 25 years old. Hunter, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric. It's freaking awesome. What a wonderful intro, by the way. I feel like a king.
There we go. Got to start him off hot today. And I really like your story, Hunter. Before we get into anything, very unique. It's different than some of the other founders that we've had on the show. And the reason for that is you started a company in college, but then transitioned into a few other endeavors and now are a president of a new completely different company. We've had a lot of experiences. So I think there's a lot of things that we can tap into today. I think our listeners would be able to find great use and great value in. So how we start every show, Hunter, is we go back to kind of day one. I want to walk the listeners through your story to share some of those highlights. And if you can start back, because you're from Indiana, what was growing up in Indiana like?
Cold, like it is now. It's like been -11. But in all seriousness, truly, Indiana has been an amazing place. I thought a couple times about, looking at California, this, that, the other. I interned in California and it opened my eyes to how good Indiana is for what it is. I mean, year after year, the area that I grew up in ultimately was one of the best areas that were growing in the United States in Indiana. It was super affordable. I noticed really quickly how affordable it was when I interned in California and how expensive things are there. And the taxes they have is just out of this world on aluminum cans, this, that, the other, on plastic bags at Walmart. Like it just blew my mind how many fees there were on everything. So it was awesome. And really it's top I think 10 states to start a company because it's lower overhead, office space, it is reasonable. And there's a big ecosystem to tap into with a bunch of entrepreneurs, specifically in Indianapolis. I just know so many that have created really good companies. And I truly feel like, now this is a massively bold statement, but Indianapolis is to me, a Silicon Valley of its own, given to the fact that it's cheaper. It's not as expensive as Silicon Valley for living, for office, for starting up a company, reasonably priced on all four fronts. It's in top 5 places in states. It might be in top 3 to start a company.
Wow. Sure.
The government incentive, there's a lot in the taxes. There's a lot to look at for Indiana.
Is there state income tax in Indiana?
There is income tax. It's not as bad as the other places.
Some places, sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. And on that point, it's very, very cool way to start. And I'd love to know, because when we flash back to, you've been here your whole life in Indiana and obviously love it, but you had some really cool experiences when you were younger that really planted the seeds of initial entrepreneurship. And so the first one that I had on there was in 8th grade, you were selling snow cones. So what was that like?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. First and foremost, the first original hustle that just clicked into my mind was my brother and I, Parker. He's now in Las Vegas doing door-to-door sales. He's a hustler. He freaking, what was it? My aunt came to us and said, her maintenance guy is leaving to college or whatever, and she'd pay us $5 an hour. Now, that was a lot of money to us, but I didn't know minimum wage at the time was $7.25. And we were sweating our butts off, picking up sticks, just doing a bunch of chores and stuff around the house. But that was the first initial hustle where I was. Sure. So me and my brother, it was funny. I think it was video games that was the killer of that. I think MW3 Call of Duty just came out. Me and my brother are like, that sucks to go sweat our butts off and only get paid $5. And then we kind of after she asked us to come back, there was one time we are just like, we think we're going to look at doing something else. After we realized how it wasn't a ton of money when we went to go to the store and buy cool toys or whatever it was. I think it was fifth or sixth grade. And then it led to snow cones where my dad, he was an entrepreneur. My grandfather and my great grandfather were all entrepreneurs starting. So the roots were kind of just generational of what it was instilled looking back further even past my life, which was grandfather jewelry shop in North Carolina. And then my grandpa would create a distribution company of electronic semiconductors and sell a bunch of electronic components and did extremely well. And then my dad would create Digitech. So before there was firewalls, Norton on our computers, all the security that are on MacBooks and all this. Before that, and computers became more prominent, my dad would go in and build firewalls and be security and kind of on a subscription basis, Digitech. And then I just saw that growing up being in the office. And so at a very young age, I was exposed to, okay, this like it was fun. Like I remember I had an option to do Chuck E. Cheese or go to my dad's workplace for my birthday, and it was like my dad's workplace because it was like the coolest thing to me.
Sure.
And seeing that was very important in what I think a lot of what your path becomes is what you learn at such a young age. And if you're instilled in that at a young age, ultimately it's a seed planted for later on in life. So I got super lucky. And then my dad said in the eighth grade, after asking him for, hey, can I get this water bottle? Can I get a new backpack and all this? At a young age, he would teach us budgeting. And it was like $200 we'd get for backpack, shoes, and clothes. I would get nice shoes, a decent backpack, and then shop at Goodwill for clothes. So I'm like, huge. I had to learn how to budget accordingly. Right. And then when we started asking him for more, like, hey, can I get a water bottle? I need it for school or basketball games. When we started asking for that stuff, he said, you guys are going to have to go make your own money. And that was a very important thing. My parents not paying Jordans. We weren't always well off. I was in a middle class family growing up where like in '08, my dad would go through a tough time in the business and have to file bankruptcy, which was an eye-opener.
Oh, wow. Sure.
Going from a nicer place in Indiana to an apartment, it being me, my sister, my brother, and my father in a 1-bedroom apartment, which was definitely, I didn't realize it. It was just like more, I get to sleep with dad. This is freaking awesome.
So would this have been, you would have been 11?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Sure.
So like the reason I say all of this is because this is all pent up upon of the picking up sticks, starting that hustle of like doing kind of this really minor landscaping, right? And then ultimately leading to snow cones. That would be the first operation I got to touch. And then the snow cones picked up. And like I said, and was hinting to and rolling to was my dad's like, hey, you guys are going to have to figure this out. I will loan you, what was it, 150 or $250 to go start a snow cone. He went to like Sam's Club or Costco and saw one. And he had the idea of, what if they started a business? And so my dad ended up loaning us. He got us snow cones. He got us a bunch of flavoring. He got us a bunch of all the stuff we'd need, table. Like my dad basically set us up for success on that. And he loaned us that. So me and my brother had to pay it was like 10, 20%. I can't remember the exact amount of profits to my father to pay off the loan. And that was awesome. We do garage sales when the neighborhood garage sales, and then we would call, we would email Facebook groups, and then they'd ask for a vendor's license, and we were like, "What is that? We don't have that." And we were like, I think I was maybe
13.
Yeah,
13.
maybe 13, and my brother was like 11 or 12. And we may have been a little bit younger.
There's one thing I'd love to highlight here because I asked every founder, do you have influence in your life? Do you have parents? Do you have other entrepreneurs, maybe aunts, uncles that taught you some of these skills? So you obviously had it very present. It was literally right in front of your face. When you're going into this venture in 8th grade, do you remember, was it your dad pushing you like, hey, you guys need to do this? So they were like really behind you to start the entrepreneurship, or you were like, I kind of like snow cones, I want to start this. And then your dad kind of just jumped on board. Like, let's take this thing to the max.
No, it was definitely my dad pushing it on us because we asked for more money. He said, "You guys need to learn how to make more money instead of asking me
Okay.
for more money." And that was very important. I was very lucky with my parents and how they taught me growing up. Just my dad being in the Marine Corps and discipline, like all that adds up to who I am today. Ultimately, my mom gives me my soft heart. My dad gives me the hardness that I have of just discipline and work your butt off and do 99% of what others aren't willing to do. And so he pushed us to snow cones. So it became, me and my brother always joke, if we stuck with it, we could have been Kona Ice, one of the biggest ice, because there was nothing really there yet.
Mhm.
And so it was an eye opener. For sure, when we started making like $100 a piece at a football game. So we got on the phone with Ross was his name at White River Christian Church. It was flag football, hundreds of kids, and it was a perfect place to be. We said,
Sure.
we give you, my dad taught us to tithe. So he's like, hey, tell them you give 10% of your profits and that will help sell it as well. But you also need to do that going forward. It's very important you do that. So that's what we did. And we'd hand them like, 20, $30 or whatever it was, $50, depending on how much we made that day. And that's how much we pay him. So at an early age, I was starting to learn, okay, how do you make it an easy sale, right? And like my dad made me and my brother call him and talk to him, like, hey, and email him, hey, can we? He would double check and stuff, but he'd be like, all right,
You
you
got to
guys
figure
gotta
this
send it.
out.
Yeah, and so we sent it, and sure enough, it just worked. And me and my brother would sit out there in lawn chairs, and we would be hustling snow cones, $2 a pop. I still have a picture I finally scraped up and found, which was the early age of a start of entrepreneurship that opened my eyes to, wow, I just made a lot of money. Not really doing a whole lot other than sitting in the hot sun, getting tan, and making shaved ice at the
People want my product. There was a demand. It was hot out. They're like, I really want this, and now they're all coming to you. That's a beautiful problem in business to have. The product, everyone wants your product, so they're willing to
Yeah.
go out of
Oh
their way,
yeah.
pay you for
And
that.
keep in mind, we were the only vendor. There was no other options.
Sure.
Like it was two
The
bucks.
scarcity. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like
Beautiful.
it had to be cash. There wasn't Venmo or anything like that at the time. So we were just dealing cash. That's it.
Sure.
So we were going under the radar. Hopefully the IRS doesn't come after me for
Incredible.
the $2,000 I
It,
made off of it.
and so you're doing this to eighth grade. How long? How many years did you do this? When did you stop doing the snow cones?
Oh, it was probably a full a year, no longer than two. I remember being called up by Ross again, wanting us to go do it. And ultimately, me and my brother kind of just gave up on it, which I think a lot of it deals with passion and you wanting to do it rather
Sure.
than being told to do it is at the end of the day what has to come to fruition.
Sure. And how much from like beginning to end? And grant your eighth grade, so it's your first venture, but you said there's a couple times where you made $100, maybe 200. You said $50 you gave back to the church, so 500. Like, how much did that venture at eighth grade end up producing?
It probably wasn't $50 I gave Ross. It was probably closer to 30, 20, $30. It would make like for sitting out there for 2 hours, me and my brother would make about $200-300.
So Grant, as a 13-year-old, you're taking
Yeah.
150. So I mean, maybe costs of goods, of course, but not really too much.
You're
Shaved
making
ice
like
and
50
flavor.
bucks an hour.
50
50
bucks an
bucks an
hour
hour.
as a 13-year-old. Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful.
There's preparation. So like have to get what's funny is my dad would get the ice. We didn't have a driving license. So he would help us getting the ice, but we'd have to pay him back. And we're like, this is BS. Like we
Yeah.
have to give him back our money that we
Yeah.
just made.
Great lessons though. It had to have been great lessons.
Oh, great lesson of like, wow, okay, and he taught, my dad would sit there at the kitchen table and be like, all right, you went to go do it, but you got expenses you guys got to pay for, and you need to save up to buy more supplies. You can't just spend all your profits.
Sure.
So we'd sit down to do cost of goods. I had no idea. He wrote COGS. And I'm like, what the heck is that? First time being exposed at the age of like 13 or whatever it was, cost of goods sold. And so it was like straws, the cones, the paper cones to put the shaved ice in. And we'd sit there, all right, these gloves, they cost like a half penny every single one. We used two though. And then my brother Parker used one. So it's 4 at a time. And then so like we would run the math and we would know roughly the profit we were making.
Beautiful.
It was
Yeah,
what's
sure.
called napkin math, really, at the end of the day, is just to make sure we were saving enough to go afford supplies when we needed it to
Right.
replenish upon our supplies. Because we'd buy in bulk at Sam's Club. But I think we made like I don't know, a couple $1,000.
$1,000 with multiple business lessons baked in there that led into many other things as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Huge.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to continue because in 2018, this is multiple years down the road. You go to Ball State, but was there any other business ventures? I saw something with Jordans, and that was that your
Oh,
next pivot? Was that your second
yeah.
business you started?
Yeah. Um, I would consider hustle wise. I love just saying hustles. I think they're less scary than saying business, especially with high school hustle, what we created. So it was like the picking up sticks. That was the first hustle. And I'm sure there's little things I did and I'm forgetting. And then it was the snow cones. And then ultimately it was in high school. My parents weren't going to pay for Jordans. So I wanted to have Jordans because you were a cool kid if you had Jordans. So I would finally, if I'd go to sneaker events that were massive conventions here in Indiana that would be held, and I would learn, me and a couple buddies, like 10 of us, would buy a table and we'd bring all of our shoes. Now I had the terrible, dusty shoes, but I somehow would swindle with like a little bit of cash and some beat up shoes and convince a kid that my shoes and this cash was better than what he had.
Right on.
And then would ultimately be learning like to barter and trade shoes to get better shoes and level up. So ultimately, I'd level up to Jordans and then I would go flip Jordans. And then I'd learn, oh, these are fake. And then I'd learn like, whoa, I just learned that I just got a pair of fake Jordans. What the hell? I got ripped off. And then I'd go selling them on eBay. I'll never forget this. One of the biggest life lessons I've learned, and my dad and my brother and all of them always make fun of me because I go on eBay for the first time and I sold Jordans. Now, keep in mind, I was a lifeguard and I was making like $8 an hour. So saving up for Jordans was really tough. Like that's 2 weeks of work to get a pair of Jordans, maybe a month.
Sure.
And with being in school and working from, I mean, I was a workhorse. I mean, I'd finish school, I'd go work like 4 to 8 or whatever, or 9. And then that would be my day. And then I go to bed and I do the same thing to make money. And so I take big bets at the time, what would be for me. And I'll never forget, I was so upset. I bought, you'd get tickets, raffle tickets to go to Foot Locker and get potentially to get these limited edition Jordans. I got it. I bought these Jordan 11 low cemetery 11s and I would flip them for like a extra $100. I'm like, this is sweet. Well, it turns out the guy sent it to my email receipt. He didn't pay me on PayPal. Totally was a scam. He sent me a receipt saying he paid for them. And I was like, oh, the money's there. This is sweet. So ultimately, it would be a learning lesson for me that my dad, I was walking out with another pair of Jordans and, LeBron 11 Christmases, which were rather expensive shoes. And he'd be like, whoa, 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 let's go check what you're doing before you go ship these shoes. Checked. And he's like, dude, you just got scammed. They're not sitting in your account. Called my buddy that
Crazy.
knew PayPal. And he was like, dude, no, it has to be in your account. I remember it was such a loss. Like I remember being so
How much were the
upset.
shoes? How much did they cost?
Oh, like I think they were like 280, which
Man,
was like two weeks to a month of pay. So it was a pretty
that's a
big
scar.
hit.
That's a
And
scar.
then,
Yeah,
oh
early
yeah, it was
scar.
a scar. It was a lesson learned to be a little bit more careful and not as jumpy, especially when you're learning new territories for me. But I think the more important thing is you got to be a doer rather than a sayer. And if I were to take that loss, I think it's really worth it to take the jump and take the chances. And that couple $100 has tenfolded me from the lessons I learned from it. And then be flipping Jordans still, I'd still do it on the side and make some cash. But ultimately, the bigger thing was really ultimately the trading. And then it was flipping stuff on eBay as well. Those were
Just
the
kept
two.
leveling up.
Oh
Kept
yeah.
leveling up. So everybody of the listeners, you see the trend. So it starts out very simple, very picking up sticks. Then you go into a little bit more complex, but still simple. I mean, you can do this when you're in high school. So you launch or ice shavings and sell that, and then you come to a little bit more, and then you're learning how to buy and sell and trade and all that. And now 2018 comes around and you're looking to go to school somewhere. And I loved what you shared with me on the initial call that we had. And you were trying to apply to all these different colleges, all these different places. And you were super pumped to do it. And you got no, no, all across the board. And finally you had Ball State that accepted you. But I'm curious, getting denied by all those schools, why did you want to go to school so bad? What did you think school had for you?
It was heavily pushed, and it was like the consensus was when Jimmy, Sarah, all these people are going to college. And at our high school, we had this bell when you got accepted and you announced you were going into a school. And me not ringing that bell, and then at lunch period seeing everyone and their mom going to college, it was kind of a wake up call. Like, Hunter, wake up! Like, you have to figure out whatever you're doing. And it was kind of like I wanted to go in the fire department. I remember calling my dad freshman year after I was in Ball State, being like, I want to drop out. I just want to become a firefighter. This isn't for me. This is too stressful. I mean, I'm anxious all the time. I feel like I'm going to get called on. I'm stupid. And for the audience, like going backwards, I mean, I got bullied at a young age. I was tall, I was skinny, I had a high voice. And then I did gymnastics, put a target on my back,
There you
and
go.
then
Yeah.
ultimately was I had a learning disability. It's called specific learning disability, but really it formed into ADHD. And I couldn't focus, I couldn't read. I hated reading so much. It turned out Two Mice and Men I was not a fan of, and being forced to read it in English class. Everyone thought it was a joke to popcorn read to me, like literally every single time. It was a nightmare to me beginning in high school. They would literally specifically I'd popcorn read to someone else, and then they would, like, everyone in the class would gang up on me, and they'd popcorn right back, and everyone would be laughing, and it was just the most embarrassing thing. And so I just had a negative connotation to
Mm.
school, and I didn't want to be in it, and it stressed me out. It was like it formed a lot of things that screwed with my mind of like I'm not smart or whatever. And getting rejected by the schools was like, man, they're right. I'm not
Wow.
smart, and I'm not like in what was crazy is I was still hustling and I was blowing everyone out of the water, just not on paper, right? So like all these other people were going to IU, Purdue, they were announcing it, and I was like, here I am. I got rejected by IU, Purdue. I got rejected by Ball State, matter of fact, and a couple of other colleges I applied to, and I'm like, I have like a 3.0 GPA. I like wasn't super bad at school. I was just mediocre. And maybe it was like a 3.1, but I got a 920 out of 1600 on the SAT score. Terrible test taker. Put me in a problem in person, I'll figure it out. Test taking, I can't do it. And what's funny is I would later in college, I'd graduate with Magnum Cum Laude medal, which was like, I think I had a 3.8 or 3.9.
Sure.
It was all about it. When I got into entrepreneurship, and what's funny is like the point that I was off, the point one or point two I was off, was all stupid stuff. Like it was like English or whatever. It was a core, but business, I had like a 4.0, and construction management, I had a 4.0. Like it was doing the stuff that I was forced to do that I
Right on.
hated.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really more than likely just the stigma, and it taught me my pivot and turning point was ultimately college. That I was going to hang out with these people that said I was an idiot. I'd hang around new people that had their heads screwed on straight, and it would change my life forever.
So I'm curious because you end up launching, I'm going to touch on that. I have multiple questions on Simpler Living, the venture you started in college, but do you think looking back, going back to that 2018, 2019 year, and I asked this to some of the founders that maybe started their company while in college or did go to college and they're doing something completely different, working on their own company. Did you need to go to school?
School is what you make of it ultimately, and it depends on your major. I would say it was worth it without a doubt. Like, and I tell students, like, now that I'm more in the high school realm and teach them how to create hustles, I think it is. It just largely depends. If you have there's going to come to a point where you need a little bit of school, whether it be that accounting class, whether it be, I think all that can be learned in person. It just makes it easier for the future to be set up to know that stuff already. So I think entrepreneurship was well worth it. It was top 25 programs in the US. I think my graduating class year, it was top 12
Wow.
entrepreneurship programs in the United States. So I was like, I knew it was worth it. It was at the time, I think it was a pass or fail major. So you pitch, and then you either got to go a whole nother year because you only pitch in fall or spring semester, or you have to take business administration and graduate in a semester. So
Do it again.
yeah.
What would you give the advice for somebody going into school? Because you work with a lot of high schoolers. So what advice do you give them to really, if they are going to college, to really maximize that time?
Network. Your network is your net worth. So I would go. And at the entrepreneurship, we'd have guests, and I would write their contact information down. I would email them. And then early on, my teacher, Crystal Geyer, she was freaking awesome. She was running the entrepreneurship. And she was just such a mom figure of all of us college majors in entrepreneurship. And she would tell us, write letters that makes you stand out, have business cards that no one at this age has business cards. So I'd have all of that. And so I wrote letters to all these people, these speakers that would come in, and I ended up getting a network, some of which are still mentors today.
Well,
like one of the guy that does he does in-home theaters, smart home technology, like a massive awesome company, Triphase Technologies here in Indiana. He did Larry Bird's place, Andrew Luck's place, Peyton Manning's place. He did 21 Pilots Studio. Like he travels all around the world doing like high-end tech in bigger, nicer homes or commercial real estate. He does all the techs, like, you know, it's just crazy next level tech. So he was a big mentor of mine, and I got that through Ball State. Like I learned to network, because like you are what you make of it ultimately. I didn't go to parties. I didn't go out to bars. Like I get ripped on by my fraternity brothers. Like I never went out. All I did was work. So like I just leveraged it. And I do regret that, by the way, a tad bit on like not enjoying college, but I don't think I'd be where I'm at. I'd just be average. So I just use it as a
that's a
stepping
terrible
stone to
word.
level
That's a
up.
terrible word. Average.
Yeah. Like that is the most biggest insult. It's like, I think if you want to be average, I'd highly recommend, or below average, joining a fraternity with a bunch of losers or a sorority, and like ultimately not caring about school, not showing up to class, talking to your teachers. If you want to be below average or average, that's exactly what
Those are the actions. Wow. So obviously you take this different approach and you get through part of your college career and you end up going on to found a company. It was a company called Simpler Living LLC, and I'm going to guess stemmed from your minor in construction management, where you found that there was a pain point in the market. But maybe just brief us on what exactly your company did, Hunter.
Yeah. So in entrepreneurship and innovation, you have to come up with a business. And I wanted to really find something. I was going to do home flipping. Like, notice that pivoted into a bunch of different stuff. Like, it was this, that, the other. Ultimately, it pivoted to simpler living. It was house renovations, and then everyone and their mom does that. All right, I don't want to do that. I want to do something fun. I'm passionate about. I'll have fun doing. So it pivoted a ton of times. It was like office buildings, shipping containers, and then I came across, like, I was watching YouTube or something one night, and it was like tiny home renovations. I was like, whoa, this is cool. And then I looked in the shipping containers. I'm like, this is so cool and unique. I don't see any of these things. So then I started doing a boatload of research. And honestly, my biggest fault was a paralysis by analysis. Like I made the biggest, best business plan, which was I got best business plan of the year. That's all I got. And I got a little bit of grant money, but ultimately it was a learning lesson to action is way bigger than writing the biggest, best business plan. Like there's a certain point you got to strategize and plan, but ultimately the biggest learning from that was like, man, I really knew a little bit too much about it. I should have just gone and done it. But at the end of the day, it was complex, like shipping containers, codes, zoning, utilities, off grid, like all this. It was being a developer and building the thing, and then also operating the thing. Those are
Right.
two different businesses,
It,
basically.
and tactically, what did that look like? So you're saying you made mistakes on that front of you did too much planning. What would you have done instead? Is it more networking, getting in front of people, more sales? Like what is that actual, what would you have actually changed?
I don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know a whole lot. I was just in the moment of learning. And I think that's where I started to thrive in learning. When I was passionate about something, I could really dig deep and find the best and make the best business plan out of it. I mean, really, ultimately, what I learned, it's capital intensive. There's easier things to start up for sure and learn. But ultimately, I don't know I would change a whole lot, because that was a big cornerstone of my learning lesson to where I'm at now, to take a lot more action than, oh, just writing the best plan in the world. So, I mean, ultimately, it's raising capital. There was just so much to know, and I
Sure.
didn't really. So, like, there was pretty, development is a beast of itself. Like it really is complex. That's why lawyers that do these deals end up being in development of building apartments, condos, industrial warehouses. Like majority of those people were lawyers. And then they understood the complexity of the deals, and then they became a developer. And that's like, was kind of an eye opener. I was like, this is why it was so confusing to me. And like, I had
You were
to
just
spend so
starting.
much time on it.
Yeah.
I was just starting. I had no idea like what average cost was, it was YouTube and just looking it up and trying to figure it out.
Crazy.
Those pitch competitions, all that would make me a little bit better and better with that. But I wouldn't change anything. It was the industry I chose that was very nuanced and very specific. It's like going to build a new AI tool, right? Like there's a bit of software tech. There's a bit you have to learn if you don't know anything about it.
Right on. Yeah. And one of the things I read though, too, Hunter, is you acquired 300, you consider them people on a wait list, leads that were interested in this, a few people that pushed money towards your project. What was your strategy to acquire these people?
Actually, it's this book right here.
Blue Ocean, no, Lean Startup. There you go.
The Lean Startup, Jake Henry, a good buddy of mine, recommended I read this. So I got it, and it was an eye opener that there's so many vanity metrics, and you just don't know what you don't know. If I were to restart, anything I make going forward is merely going to be this. Make sure there's demand before you waste your time and hours, which is having a list and an MVP, not building all the bells and whistles. I was obsessed with making it the best, biggest, best planned thing. And it's like everything blows up and all your plans go to shreds. So like the big thing with that book is ultimately to lead to demand. And so it was an eye opener when it was like, make a wait list. Like that was an actionable thing. I'm like, why aren't people investing in this? I feel like it's going to be a good deal. And ultimately it would lead to, no one knew that this is such a nuanced idea. It hadn't been brought to Indiana. So it was like, all right, let's figure it out. Right. Then I became in the process of what's in the way becomes the way. And that's a super important quote in my life. What is the way becomes the way. Don't go to jump to step 10 when you need to walk forward. What's the next step? And then was asking investors, what's the issue? Getting feedback. And they're like, well, we just don't know how this is going to work. And then so I built a massive wait list. And then when I go audition on for Shark Tank, just to be clear, I didn't land on the Shark Tank floor. I auditioned for Shark Tank in Indianapolis 2 years ago. And I take that idea, but I had a wait list. I had something that was, these people are willing. Now, what I learned from that was ultimately, if you don't have paying customers, they're not true customers. My grandma was on that list, and my grandma probably wasn't going to stay there. So it was like a bit of a vanity metric of 300 people of what this book calls it, which is just like a metric that really doesn't have a whole lot of weight to it. It's just like, yeah, there's people that are interested on your newsletter. If you get them to have a down deposit or something like that, you don't have customers, by the way, until they pay you. People will be at the door. People will be on the call. Yeah, I'll totally do that. You give them a call back. You never get in reach with them, or
they're just
whatever.
being nice. They're just trying to get you off the phone.
They don't want to. They don't want to crush your dreams. So it's ultimately paying customers is the best business.
How would you approach, like, if you could have done that differently with the wait list? Would you have said like, all right, 10? Say you put down whatever the investment would have been, like you put down 10%, we'll hold the money, and then when you get it back, you get some sort of extra bonus? Or how would you have approached that to acquire customers before it's even built?
So another book, $100 million offers. And like I deeply annotate all the books I read. That book was pivotal on down deposits and knowing how to pitch, how to get people. And then there was another thing.
I think that's my next book too. I've read his leads, but the $100 million offers I haven't read yet.
Yeah, that was his first book. It was really good. Cool. I really liked that. I have $100 million leads as well. Building a story brand was very important. I use that book heavily, that you're bringing in an audience. That wait list got monthly newsletter updates, and I made them fun. I thought about all the stuff and just wanted to do something different. I'm like, all these are boring as hell. Like, it's just the same old, same old, same old. So I put memes, GIFs, and like cool stuff that would grab attention ultimately. I think ultimately what I learned from $100 million offers is don't do five. If it's $400 a night to stay with what I was building, do not charge them $5, because like you need to charge them way more on like 20 to like 50% down, because that's a true customer. Someone that gives you $5 isn't a true customer. That doesn't mean they're going to pay out like a big number, because it could be your friend just giving you $5 at the end of the day to boost the numbers. I think having a true payment and a true bigger barrier than just like, here's a couple cents is the ultimate goal, because then you have actual paying customers that are interested in what you're doing.
When you reflect back on that time, because I saw, and it's kind of on a pause right now. Was it January of this year is when you kind of put it on a little bit of a pause?
2024. So it was last year.
Okay. So January 2024, though, is when it was put on a pause. What
Mhm.
would you say the biggest lesson that you've taken into now your next few experience we're going to touch on? What did you take away from that venture?
Paralysis analysis will kill you. Like it will
Take
literally
action.
kill you.
Just make something happen.
Yeah. And I would say again, it's not coming up with an excuse. It's just knowing what you're getting yourself into. Like there's way easier businesses than this that had a lot of risk, a lot of startup capital. And what I learned is investors want more money than the banks. So you have to give them a lot of money in their return. And like making the deals and learning all that, like it was eye opening for sure. But paralysis analysis it was just go do and figure it out. Stress and anxiety are merely someone that's putting off something or like a bigger thing that's coming away. It's just like, but if you do action, like you can't be nervous and anxious about it.
Okay, so now to transition a little bit, Hunter, in February of 24 is when, and you told me this in our pre-chat, but you said there was a program you were a part of that connected you to a Jiffy Lube that was overseeing 17 different locations, and you pretty much just got placed in there with somebody who was hustling a great, which turned into a great mentor of yours. But I'd love to know, like, what did you do in that position? I mean, there's a lot of things I saw in that job description, but what were your responsibilities? What did you take care of?
Yeah, so that was right after I graduated in 2022. I got Orr Fellowship through a program. I landed this thing. No need to go into Orr Fellowship, so to say, but it was pivotal. It was pivotal in my life for network and connection and surrounding myself with like-minded people like I did in college, but for after college and career. So it was just surrounding myself with people that were hustling, that were at all different universities all around the world. Um, with a lower acceptance rate. I think they accept like 5 to 10% of people that apply. So it was very harder to get into. But then you landed at a partner company. My partner company was Jiffy Lube, which commitment's 2 years. So or fellowship can be a confusing thing to describe. It's really just like think of like a business fraternity and a college. You still go to college, you still do this, but instead of college, you have a paying job. It's your 9 to 5, and then you have this kind of like business fraternity that does events and
And
fun
it's
stuff.
completely separate from Ball State. So this is like totally
Completely
removed. It's its
separate.
own. Got
We
it.
recruit at colleges, so it's like
Okay.
we have recruitment leads. So like it's a nonprofit that just kind of is a cycle where us or fellows end up recruiting the next class. So it's like they built this flywheel of a cycle that's been really successful, and they've scaled. They have 1,200 applicants this past year or
Okay.
something.
Wow.
But
Sure.
a lot of impressive people that go through the program there. But then I'd land at Jiffy Lube. I'd stay there for about 2.5 years. And I got manager of business strategy. Now, when I got hired, I just knew I was working directly with the CEO that owned these 17 Jiffy Lube franchises in the state of Indiana. So I was like, that is golden nugget. But I saw it was like kind of hidden because like it was Indiana Auto Care. Like who wants to work for an auto care place? Like it sounded like an insurance company. And then I saw it was like Jiffy Lube franchise, and I'd learned a ton from him. And it was the best opportunity out of all the 70 companies that there were, or 50 to 70. So when I landed and he said, "All right, you're hired," I said, "What will I be doing?" And he was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Okay, what will be my job title?" He said, "I don't know. I just wanted an Orfella. I know you guys are really good." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is like being thrown into the deep end." But it was the best opportunity to be an entrepreneur rather than an entrepreneur and
Hmm.
building my own thing and learn on someone else's own dime. That was very important and pivotal in my life. And he'd give in to me like crazy. So it was marketing. Like he would just throw stuff at me. Like there was, keep in mind, he just acquired the business 3 months before from his father-in-law. He's in his 30s. I think he's around like 35 years old. He worked at top graduate from Purdue, worked at Tesla for a little bit, internship there. I think it was like auto braking system he was helping with, coding. And then he went to work for Mark Cuban for a couple of years on a
Okay.
startup, like the Segway you jump on, go back and forth. And then he was like chasing, he's got about to go back to Silicon Valley to do a startup, but he's like, I'm chasing all these gold rabbits. And he's like, there's dirty businesses that I can learn
Making
from.
tons of money.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
so his girlfriend at the time, which is now his wife, Yeah, it's kids. They have kids too now, and it's been cool to see their first kid. And as I was there, they had their first kid. She was pregnant when I got hired, which was crazy. And now they have another kid. So it's cool to see their life as well transform as entrepreneur and like how he's working around family, being with family, doing all this stuff, putting the family in the business, just how the whole operation works. Now, the question was, because I love going down rabbit holes, if you couldn't tell is the fact that I had anything and everything. I wore like all the hats. There was merely just me and EJ Williams, who was the owner of the company, that opened our laptops. The rest were operations. The rest were district managers going to stores. The rest were managers at stores. The rest were employees, lube tech, mechanics. That was like 99%. It was me and the CEO that were opening our laptops. We were marketing. We outsourced. And what I learned is like delegating and having vendors was very important. We had accounting, we had this, we had a marketing team, we had that we outsourced. We had all this different stuff. So I wore so many different hats and I got exposed to everything. Profit and loss meetings, I would make those financials better. And like I said, those 80s and 90s documents, like it was making group chats. So he just did that right before I came in. So he made group me. So they could now
Okay.
communicate to managers and solve problems. Like it was merely my whole job of the entire thing was making an old company a more modern, more efficient, more profitable
Sure.
company. And we increased bottom line by 10%. I think my last year before leaving, it was 12%. And my whole goal was to increase our multi-care, which was the confused the consumer a lot and it was a hard to hurdle, which was there's Jiffy Lube, oil change, all that normal stuff everyone's used to. Multi-care was something they're scaling into and they have been for the past like 10 years, which was mechanic services. And that was like nuance. And it
Sure.
was hard to get over the customers thinking of like, oh, there's a bunch of rednecks at Jiffy Lube that are going to duct tape my brakes to my rotors. Like that was the consensus of the hurdle we had to jump, but we were lower than dealership costs. So there
Sure.
was a happy medium of figuring out that, but it was merely making an old business a new business with new systems, new operations, new procedures, reports. And then I'd hire a virtual assistant in India, Umair, shout out to Umair, love that guy to death. I still talk to him today. And we just learned together. And now he's full time, Umair, and he's running and ordering their oil. He's doing like crazy stuff. Like
Incredible. Sure.
he's an awesome, awesome, awesome guy. So there was hiring. I was Indeed hiring, marketing, financials, accounting. Like I was
I
everything.
even saw construction projects. It said spearheading construction
Oh
projects.
yeah, I was on construct. We were lean and mean, so I was on the
Yeah.
roof when we needed to replace a roof. That was
Incredible.
a commercial roof, not shingles. It was like these tarps we lay. Yeah, it was like everything. Any improvements on buildings, I'd take days off. We had to relay foundation on our Newcastle because the foundation was sinking. I was on anything and everything. I wanted to learn from everything I could, and it was very important for me to be in different roles. I learned if I'm siloed, it sucks. I can't do it. Like I can't be do this one thing. I have to be jumping around, and I just love that. So it's very important, and I learned a ton there.
And when he threw you off the deep, so almost like he threw you off the deep end, was he just like, Hunter, I need you to hustle for me, but you're gonna have to figure this out? Or is he trained? Is he walking you through, hey, this is how you do this, this is how you do this? Like, what was that relationship actually
Oh,
like?
it was a mixture of a little bit of both, more on the side of figure it out.
Okay. Hunter,
But
go figure it out.
he was always really good about, hey, call me if you have any questions, and he'd call me within the next hour if he didn't answer. He was really good about mentoring me just enough for me to get a bit of traction. And then after a year, I'd just fly. He'd give me something, and there wasn't much questions. And then it was like, hey, Hunter, you have to shift now. You've made all these wonderful reports, but like we don't need any more reports. Like it's just going to get flooded with data. So it was being knowing your KPIs, which for us it was ticket average, what per car are we getting in revenue? It was car count and it was bay times, which were crucial to what we were selling. We were selling time. Now Susie gets more time with her family instead of changing her oil herself. It's 20 minutes instead of spending an hour changing her own oil and higher quality grade oil. So
Sure.
I just learned a ton there. He was good enough about giving me enough information for me to learn on my own and be more dynamic.
You mentioned a couple times, I think this is pretty cool. Like you're thrown into basically you're his right hand man. Like you're right there with them. And now all these other like all these other operators are running these stores and you're 23, 24, and you're managing these people. What was that dynamic like?
Oh my gosh. I'll never forget my first wake up call. I was a go-getter and I was ready to make an impact. I was full of energy. And first thing I saw was bonuses. And I just read Extreme Ownership, which is a really good book. And he talks about keeping it simple, stupid. And he gives multiple examples on people making more complex incentives, cash incentives than not. And I wanted to make sure all the managers knew it and were telling the truth when they knew it. Because it was complex. There was like 9 bonuses they had that they could get: store cleanliness, their ticket average, this, that, the other. District managers are coming. And so I learned all these guys, keep in mind, are boomers. So like they're the generation. I was just at Jiffy Lube getting my oil change. I'm going to the awards ceremony this coming weekend on Sunday to talk to them again. But I got slammed. I'll never forget that. I called a bunch. I didn't realize they were good about holding their emotions. But oh my gosh, like I didn't realize I was pissing them all off. And here I am just like, okay, thanks for letting me know. And then picking up dialing, dun, dun, dun. And I would know some were pissed off, they just met me and I'm 23 years old. And I'm like, hey, I know how to run everything better than you. Listen to me. And then I got a call from
Sure.
boss man. He called me and he said, hey, stop calling them. I was like, what? Why? It's like, you're like upsetting them about like them thinking that they don't know the bonus. And I was like, it was a wake up call about how to address things in a different way. And then going forward, I would ask to do it again, but I'd be like, hey, I don't know much. And I just present it more in a humble way. And I learned a ton from that. So that was hands down
Wow.
one of the biggest things, especially when my boss, we had to fire the manager at Noblesville, one of one of the better stores. And so it was an eye opener when something happened in the family, someone passed away for the district manager. My boss was on a vacation. The other district manager had something else going on. I was the only person, and I had to go hire someone that was in their, 40s, 50s, some in their 60s. And I was sitting on the other side of the table, being 24, 23 years old, whatever I was, and having an interview. That was a wake-up call. And I was like, that was stressful because I was like, there's no way I can do this. And like going to the store and going to these oiled down floors, interviewing people in the office. Like it was an eye opener.
Wow.
And I learned from an early age that like it's just something you have to be more humble about, and it's very much so your approach and how you approach it. At which it's
Wow.
not usually what you're saying; it's how you say it. So engaging your tone, your body language, all that stuff is very important. How to win friends and influence people
Huge.
is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah. No, that's a crazy concept because I'm learned that too is like if you can frame something properly, you can say almost anything, but if you frame it the right way, it can come off. You're saying the same words, but one has like an extreme impact you get people to move, and the other one is just flat or people are retract like,
Yeah,
gosh, what? But it's the same words, but it's how you approach it, like how you bring it to someone, which is crazy.
absolutely.
And there's another little tidbit I want to tap into a little bit more is you're hiring people that are in 40, 50, 60 years old. And I'm assuming, just for clarity, they have a lot more experience. Like they've at least you're hiring people that have had, okay. So how do you know as an entrepreneur when you need to hire for a certain role with a lot more experience because you maybe lack in that experience, there's a deficiency? How did you know that they actually had that skill? Because you've only been in this for a few years, that they were way ahead of you. How did you know they had that skill?
It was like for mechanics, for example, I don't know much. I learned a lot. And I'd sit there and be in stores and learn from Bryce mechanic at Noblesville. He was like a senior mechanic. I would sit there, I'd have stuff done on my car because we got a discount for working for the company. And I'd literally sit there and understand some of the stuff. One of the biggest learning things out of all of this is hands down being in store. I got not paralysis analysis. I was all data. I knew high level how stores were doing their health metrics. I knew all that. But when you go in the store, you get
Wow.
to see leadership. You get to see the things you can't see on a piece of paper, which are very important in how people operate, how they go to customers. Oh, they're not upsell, they're not like selling other products. They're not selling air filters. They're not selling this, that, the other. They're not doing a full inspection, checking their lights. Like there's so much you learn when you go boots on the ground.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I learned a ton from that. And I'd call the guys we already have. Why reinvent the wheel when I don't know anything? And ask them, the district managers that have been doing it for 40, 50 years and didn't since they were 18. Let me call them. Hey, what questions should I be asking to know if they're BSing the answer or whatever? And so it was asking them, and the answer was always at hand. I had people behind me. And after a year, there was rapport built, literally to the point where some of the managers like me more than like anyone else in the company. So anytime something like had to be brought to them, bad or good or whatever,
They go to
would
you.
ultimately I would be laying it down. And they were like 50, 60 years old because I
Sure.
built so much rapport with them, whether it be someone at one of the managers at the stores liked lunch boxes. Well, I collect Hot Wheels. So we connected on that forefront and got hobbies in. It's stupid stuff that has nothing to do with business that you connect with
So you bridge
people
the gap.
and you bridge the gap with like, oh, he understands this. And then I would go and I got him like his car. I found like this nice model that's his car that he drives that he likes and is very proud of, and I got it in toy form. It was building these tiny
Yeah.
things,
Little
little
small
things
things.
along the
Yeah. The
way.
small thing that like maybe took you 30 minutes of time and a few bucks. And it's like that goes a long way. There's one other thing on this front that I think is important to highlight before we go into where you're at today, Hunter. And it's just the value of mentors. And maybe just share your thoughts on how important, because I think not stressed enough, but how important is having a mentor, someone that has been where you're trying to go.
Crucial, crucial, crucial. And what I learned is you level up in mentors. First, it was like the guy who just started a business. Then it was someone that was revenuing 1 million. Then it was someone that was running like a $25 million business. And then it would jump to what is now like people selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of companies that I'm now getting mentored by and seeing how they build companies, how they delegate this, that, the other. It's equipping yourself and leveling up in your mentors. There comes a time it just kind of naturally flows out when you stop working as hard to talk to that person. Because, by the way, mentoring, you should always do the work if you are getting a lot. You should be giving and making it as easy as possible. Hey, what if we make it this time? Writing them letters, going the extra mile, because all these business people, all they have is but time. The most finite thing that we have as humans is time on earth. And with that time, it's very important. Those wealthy people understand their time is now their most valuable asset. They are trying to get something they don't have anymore that I have, which is time, right? So setting all these up are super important and crucial in mentoring. Getting a mentor that's rock solid.
Sure.
It's a simple, hey, here's 5 dates and times that I can meet with you at these locations. Let me know what side of town you're on. I'll send a calendar invite. I'll go there, always offering to pay and pulling out my wallet. But I knew like they always end up paying for it when they're, more successful. But I would always try to pay for it. And some of the times they would let me, which was very important that I didn't like put my wallet. Oh, I thought you were going to pay for it. I
Yeah.
would always try to pay for it, which is very important. And going the
I
extra
like
mile with
that.
that because they're giving you advice to help level you up and they don't want it to be a waste of time. Ultimately, it's doing what they say. That's how you get like the sticky mentors that stick with you. Bob Court, for example, has been with me for 8 years. When COVID hit, I tried to get an internship. It got canceled. I talked to the guy, emailed him, hey, do you have any work? My grandfather used to work for you. You run a successful construction company. He owns multiple successful restaurants, which is one of the hardest businesses to start in town and just in general. So I wanted to learn from the guy, but he said, no, but I have someone else. And then he would end up mentoring me a ton on business, me trying to raise capital, this, that, the other on my other business. And that mentorship was sticky because I did what he said and I did
Mhm.
not waste his time. I wrote him handwritten letters. I went the extra mile. He was a construction guy. I got like a matchbox that was a skid steer. I painted it. I put his logos on it, and now he lost it. He told me he was enough to tell me he's
Yeah,
like,
there you
I
go.
don't know, it's somewhere in a drawer, honestly. But he was like, it went the extra mile, and it
For
showed
sure.
him I'm willing to work for his time, and I'm different from the other person that wants your time that's
Right.
trying to get you to mentor them. You have to be willing to do what 99% of people aren't willing to do in order to be a part of the 1%. It's as simple as that. And that's writing letters. That is going the extra mile. And when they understand that and you start applying their advice, and a lot of these guys, you'll learn they're passionate about what they do. Like me getting on this podcast, I'll run down so many rabbit holes. Same things with mentors. If you talk to them about something they're really good at and really passionate about, it's this measurement of 20% questions, 80% them talking. That's the way you should frame mentorship because it should never be you trying to teach them a ton. Although there's just not much to give when you're younger. Although, like, Bob comes to me for AI advice now. So I told him to get this Plaud AI, Plaud AI, which is a wrist like watch or necklace. You press and hold it. It summarizes the conversation. I press and hold it. It stops. It loads on my phone. Now I'm
Sweet.
teaching him it. So that was my only thing I could help Bob with.
Maybe we
So
can
now,
put that in the show notes for the team here, for the listeners.
oh yeah, Plot AI, it's a game
Okay.
changer. And there's some things you can help them with, but the stickiness is all about you going the extra mile, because what people think is like mentors are just going to flock to them. And it's like you have to present yourself in a way that you're selling yourself and you are worth the time that they're about to spend, because they could spend it on their business and make a lot more money instead of spending it with you.
Right
The
on.
whole goal, though, is them to give back to their younger selves. If they see their younger selves in you, better bet your top dollar someone helped them and it's them paying it forward. Same thing I'm doing with High School Hustle now. Same thing I'm doing when this other guy took my job at Jiffy Lube. It is giving back to what was given to you. It is
Perfect.
merely just this cycle of, and the important thing with mentors, Harvard did a study. 99% of people's success is formed from what is called a reference group. It is the five people you hang out with the most: mom, dad, girlfriend, boyfriend, your buddy Timmy and your buddy Susie, or whatever. Those people are very important in your life. Those five people are ultimately what will dictate your success. You are who you surround yourself with. And understanding that was a game changer in college, to be a part of a fraternity that had 16 consecutive semesters of being top GPA. It was setting myself up to know I would be surrounded by people that were going to push me
Right on.
further, not pull me back and be a cinder block, right? And it's take your five reference groups, add up their net worth, divide it by five, and that's what your net worth should be, or could be, is projected to be, because you're hanging around them. That is like one of the easiest things I learned in
Incredible.
the book. I was like, that's genius. So the five people you hang out with the most, add up their net worths, and then divide it by the amount of people, could be even 10 people. And that's what your projected net worth is, because that's who you're surrounding yourself with. And that was just an eye opener to be like, okay, this guy
We got to
sold his
keep leveling
for
up. We
100
got to keep
million.
moving
This
up.
guy
We got
sold
to,
his business for 50 million.
yeah.
This guy did this, this, this. I'm like, I'm projected right now to be 35 million in net worth.
Huge.
Probably even
Yeah.
more with, so like it's very important that you have a diverse mentors, boys, girls, like Lauren James, she helps me a ton. She runs a really good foundation. Like there's certain people that you have to be very strategic about who you pick, but
Sure.
also be very over the top on trying to help them go the extra mile, writing letters. It's very
And you could
important.
even do all of that and still not have the opportunity. So it's like you have to do that just to cross the bridge of like, okay, we'll give you some minutes. And then it's like, then you have that first meeting. And then it's like, then you have to follow up. And like, I love all that you said. I think
And
those are
it falls through the
huge
cracks.
highlights.
I'm telling you right now, that's 99% of the people. It's gonna fall through the cracks. You're gonna have classwork, or if you're in the career, you're gonna have some type of job come up and you're gonna forget about it. Setting reminders, I forget everything. Setting reminders, having a freaking journal. I think writing and retaining things are very important. I have a journal I write every single day, every single week, every single month. I know my goals, top 3 goals for the year. You make it as simple as possible. It's just learning from these books and applying them, which is important. Same thing with mentors, learning from them and applying it, or you're just wasting everyone's time.
Right
You're
on.
wasting your time reading a book. You're wasting your time with a mentor. You're wasting time everywhere. Just go play video games or watch a movie or something else, because you're wasting everyone's time if you're not going to apply what you're learning.
So we transitioned into High School Hustle, and this started in August of 24. So you wrap up your time with Jiffy Lube, and I'm going to read that mission statement for our listeners because I thought it was pretty cool. So it says, our mission at High School Hustle is to help students achieve their hustle dreams through practical experience and mentorship, making learning entrepreneurship fun and impactful.
I'm going to re-say it because it's something different and it's a lot more simpler. We empower mentors to guide high school students in creating successful hustles today.
Love
So
it.
that was the mission statement. I'm curious where you got that, because it's very important I change that, if you got it somewhere, because it probably is. We change wording so much, but that is our North Star, what we're doing. We're measuring how many, we want million hustles by 2034, high school hustles, and
Sure.
they have to generate over $400. That's what we consider a successful hustle. But yeah, sorry, continue.
It and just is simply, if you can just lay it out, maybe a simple description, like what do you do with those students? Like what is your main main job role right now?
Yeah, running this I'm an executive director, as it's called in the nonprofit world, because we're a 501(c)(3). It could be, you name it president, you name it CEO, whatever it is. And the two co-founders are really like chairman, how it's set up. They give me advice, they guide me, and they help a lot with their network to really bolster this thing to another level. So really, in a nutshell, High School Hustle is again, we're empowering mentors to guide high school students in creating successful hustles today. Now, the today is very important. We want people making money this weekend. We don't want them creating business plans, LLCs, worrying about taxes, doing all this stuff, because none of that stuff matters if you can't get sales. Like, sales is everything. You'll waste your time. Turns out, make a business plan, LLC, worry about taxes, do all this stuff 3 6 months, and it's all about making paper airplanes and selling them. Turns out, when I go to the street and try to sell them, no one wants them, and it's not profitable. And I'm sure there'll probably be a business that sells paper airplanes and tells me differently. But like, for the most part, like, that's the part of the idea, right? It's like we spend so much time in paralysis analysis. And what I learned with Simpler Living, I'm now applying here, right? It's like, go make money this weekend. So think of hustles like lawn mowing, gutter cleaning, power washing, girls doing hair, nails, babysitting, food catering. Simple hustles. We can literally fund up to $500 and go make money this weekend.
Love it.
Snow plowing, as it's cold in Indiana, it snowed a little bit. Lawn mowing, like simple hustles. Simple hustles. You can watch a YouTube or two and go make money. That, being dynamic and learning that stuff, is way more important than making the most complex cryptocurrency. Simpler living became complex living. I do not recommend to a high school student to do that. So it's like, do simple hustles that make money this weekend, and you can level up. So guy wanted to make a video game. And it's like, all right, we'll level up. It's like, can you go flip video games? Can you go learn this? Can you go learn that? And like, level up to go do that. We don't want to be dream
Start
crushers.
simple,
We
right?
want to we want to them to learn simple business that opens their eyes to financials, to being an operator, helping customers out. Merely getting money is all on the consensus of being able to provide value. When a
Right.
customer hands you money, it means you provided something that was worth that value to them. Whether it
Right.
was snow plowing, you saved their time. Like, there's deep psychological things, but it all is on the consensus of creating value. It's
Right on.
super simple. So it's three things we provide: up to $500 in funding. Timmy wants a lawnmower, it's 150. We'll help fund that. On the consensus, he gets three pre-sales with 100% down. Mom, dad, Aunt Susie, grandma, Kathy, all these people. And then you get three pre-sales. We're
Okay.
trying to make them fund it to have skin in the game and learn themselves. But we'll be there for more poverty inclined areas to help them kickstart and fund their
Sure.
hustles if um, they can't fund it. But we want them going to ask their parents for the money. So funding up to $500, mentorship, which is the most important piece. It's the core of how we thrive. And then a 10-step playbook on how to go create a hustle. Now, what comes
Ooh,
out of
perfect.
that?
I was gonna say perfect. Like, I'd love to know what you take, because a lot of our listeners, maybe people that have never, like, you don't just have to be in high school. Like, maybe they've never started a business before and they really don't know. I'd love to know, like, if you have that down, that 10-step framework, just give us like a high level of like, what can somebody expect when first starting a business? What should they be focusing on?
Yeah, so it's all sales. It's all on the notion of sales. Like, we truly believe everyone wastes time. It's like having that wait list. So on Lean Startup, it's also having paying customers for that service, getting 50% down, not just $5 down. Like,
Sure.
getting things that people are willing to pay, because when money leaves their bank account, there is some type of value they believe in that you can create. I'm pulling up the steps. The first one is find your why. We think everyone should be, one, passionate about what they're doing, but have a North Star at which they're trying to reach for. High school students, iPhone, Jordans, whatever it is, there's a deeper why that we try to pull out of them. And then based off of that, we start with why. And then step two is find a hustle partner. So we believe it's better to get doors closed in your face with a partner and laugh it off, a business partner, than to get the door closed in your face and be like, man, that kind of sucked. So that's step two. Step three, list your advantages and choose your hustle. So like, think of like, dad has a truck, I can pick up junk, this, that, the other.
Hmm.
Listing your advantages. Hey, we have a snow shovel in the garage, I can use that. This, that, the other. And then they choose a hustle. And then they call three competitors and ask them questions. And
Oh,
they are in
nice.
high school,
Hmm.
so they can say, hey, I'm in high school, I have this assignment that I'm doing with this club that we're running, this entrepreneurship program. And then they learn everything. Matter of fact, I truly believe in the saying, eat your own dog food, which is if you got to test the product or service, whatever you're doing before you even give it. So I revitalized snow cones and then I pivoted. I'm like, I hate that. Went on eBay, made like $1,000. So I'm like, I know this plan works. And then I'm like, well, I'm also further in business and understand things. Then I had high school students do it. So that was very important early on, having those steps. And then all is based off of step 7. I'll jump to it super quick because there's like profit plan, pencil out, napkin math. It's simple stuff. Our business plan is calling 3 competitors and learning what they're doing, not in reinventing the wheel.
Mhm.
And then it's after step 7, which is get 3 pre-sales with 100% down. That is showing you have customers and there's a demand. We provided funding last year and we learned a lot, which was a lot of it ended up collecting dust. So that was very important early on to learn from that it's all based up on demand. Like we're very action demand, go make money this weekend versus go build the best business plan, go build a pitch deck. That's corporate world. If you want
Sure.
to be corporate, that's what you build. But there's bigger, I don't want to also like slash that. Like you have to do that for tech, you have to do that for SaaS, you have to do that for like all that stuff. But high schoolers, like in there's Palmer Luckey who created like Oracle or not Oracle, Meta Quest, like that ended up getting acquired by Facebook or Meta now by $1 billion. And he created it at 17 years old. So there's people that can do it, but the odds are like 0.0001%. We want our best odds. So it's creating these simple hustles is
Right
what we're
on.
teaching. And that the pre-sales are so important. And then it's do the 3 jobs. Like it's learn the ropes. As Charles Munger would say, invert everything. We inverted everything. What does everyone go do? They make a business plan, LLC, this, that, the other. They don't even know if it's going to work. They could just waste all their time in the world. And so it's asking people early on if they would buy the product, are interested in the service, given all the details haven't been mapped out, right? So that is the
Starting
consensus
there.
of how all these successful founders have created companies. They bootstrap it. They don't go, funding, raising capital right out of the gate. Again, there's different lanes, so I don't want to make people confused. There's SaaS, there's this, that, the other, that you have to raise capital, that you have to have those corporate pitch decks. And I had to have it for Simpler Living as I raised money and investor, one sheeters, all that stuff. But simple hustles again, remember, like
Keep it simple.
keep it simple. We're just keeping it simple, stupid. And they won't learn how to do the hustle until they got 3 pre-sales,
Right.
which is
Awesome.
gold. That's
Yeah.
how it should be.
Right. Focusing on sales first. On kind of a personal note, and I feel like this would be a good question for you because you work with so many students. If you were to flash back to high school and maybe even what you're telling these high schoolers now, what advice are you giving yourself that like, man, I wish if I could have been back at 16 years old, this is what I would have been doing.
Oh, goodness. I would just start creating hustles. You don't know what you want to do the rest of your life. Me and you don't like me and you, for example. I mean, we have a consensus of what we're doing now will be what we're doing in 20, 30 years. Probably not. Who knows? Maybe, but it's a small percentage. So I think it's just going out there and doing and learning. Like that is the biggest thing. Stop making excuses and start really pushing yourself to understand. And just the best saying that I could provide is learn in your 20s, earn in your 30s. You're not trying to make the most money in your 20s. You're trying to learn from the greats and sacrifice opportunity. Sacrificing money over opportunity. I didn't get paid a ton at Jiffy Lube. I wasn't racking it in, so to say. I got paid fairly, but I was learning. That was a big difference. Learn in your 20s, earn in your 30s. That was the biggest thing that I learned that would push me forward at a different level. So that's what I would push them. Go learn on someone else's own dime. You don't need to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Not everyone can. Like, go learn from other people, but start planting seeds, which is ultimately creating hustles. That's our big consensus on everything that we do at High School Hustle as we're scaling from one location that had 20 students to 16 locations in central Indiana, with now only doing 5 call out meetings. We have 770 student signups. So it's very important as we scale times 20 times, actually it's going to be a 50x this year on our infrastructure.
Mm.
And how it's built is a whole other story. It's being simple, it's being infectious in a good way that can spread, and there's an obvious gap in the market. I mean, Blue Ocean talks about it. Don't go looking for competition. I mean, at the end of the day, when keeping it simple, I just say straight up, learn in your 20s, earn in your 30s. Like,
Right on.
don't try to make the most amount of money in your 20s. If it still happens to be it and you make Like one of the guys that's a mentors, he makes, $1 million on his lawn care business, not makes he revenues. So it's not his bottom line. He's done it. I mean, he didn't go to college and like he just so happened to make money. And
Right.
so I think he's still learning too, and I'm still learning. So I think just learn in your 20s, earn in your 30s is the best advice I'd provide to anyone that's younger. But I think it's creating these side hustles in which plant seed for you to raise your risk altitude. And later on, when you go learn from one of the greats and you see a gap in the market, that's one heck of an opportunity. You can make that jump.
So as we look into the future, and maybe that's coming back to simpler living, but maybe not. I'd love to know, what does Hunter Beale look like at the very, very top of his game? You've made it to the peak, the pinnacle. Mount Everest was conquered. What does that look like? Paint us a vision.
So I'm in a deal right now that's under contract. We're going to buy commercial real estate. Under contract, by the way, does not mean the deal has been purchased. It's due diligence, which is looking into things, trying to find problems, trying to find the red flags. We're acquiring a $9.5 million retail strip, kind of like a mall strip, so to say, but it's just a section of it. LA Fitness, Goodwill. And I'm learning a ton with that with my business partners. What it looks like, I think, is being in commercial real estate. But I think the longer vision is actually, let's see if I can unplug this. It is this poster that I have, and I think it's manifesting upon, what you want to do. It's all of these things. I truly believe the
Very cool.
market is primed for a new housing structure, which I've heard it all. I've met all the developers. Headaches are the worst commercial real estate you can be in. They're picky, inspections are terrible, things always go wrong. This is a newly developed house I'm in right now. Plugs are falling out of the wall, like it wasn't inspected that well. Like there's many things and headaches that come with it. And it's you're trying to create ARR, annual recurring revenue, and apartments, all that is like annual recurring revenue that investors like. But when you build something and sell it and you're always looking for the next deal, it's a tougher business model. But again, I think there's enough passion that you're going to have your wins or you're going to have your falls on each and every business. Just pick your poison that you want to have. So I think long term, 20, 30 years is building homes that are more sustainable and clean, but like also innovative as heck. We've, three-folded on our electricity use since the 1950s. Our square footage has grown massively as we live in this Amazon consumption, have all this stuff world, and
Mhm.
I fall tribute to it without a doubt. But I think it's important that simpler living will possibly be revived, just not on the more short-term rental, but on the more buying aspect of kind of literally making these more modular, smaller, easy to enter in the housing market that isn't $500,000 and you have to put 20% down in tough markets, high interest rates. There's so much to understand with that. So that's why it's important that cutting your teeth on these other deals are very important in what I've been guided to do. So like commercial real estate is what the future holds for sure. I'm very passionate about building architecture. I have 10 revisions on the Charlie model. I literally have these things. I didn't know there's renderings. I just did. And so I have all these tiny homes
Okay.
that are 3D printed off.
Nice.
And then I got this model I
Wow.
architected. And so like that is where I'm passionate about making design, making something different, and then it'll be macro apartments,
Very
I
cool.
think is a long term. But yeah, that's the future.
Very cool. And we're going to finish in our last minute here, Hunter, how we finish every episode. And it's
Okay.
with the quote that means the most to you as the entrepreneur. And the quote that you gave me was, luck is where opportunity meets preparation, by Seneca. There's a lot of other people it's attributed to, but Seneca is the most notable. I'd love to know, what does this quote mean to you? And how can the next generation take this as a words of encouragement to make a big difference in the world we live in today?
I think a lot, I think comes with faith and like everything I have and will have and is produced by the faith of what I believe in, which is Jesus as my savior. And I think that is the luck is a lot of him and praying for his path that he's provided about me. For me, having wisdom like Solomon, courage like David, I think are very important. And then luck is like when people get confused with luck is taking many opportunities and failing, and then just being prepared, and then one ends up paying off out of the 100 times you ate it on the ground on failing something. That is merely luck. is when opportunity meets preparation. Preparation of failing a bunch, and then you have this one opportunity that skyrockets you.